River Arts Festival's 15th Anniversary Digital Edition. The festival is sponsored by Haldeman Artworks with support from Heritage Canada. If you're able, please consider making a donation at www.riverartsfestival.ca or by visiting our gallery and gift shop at the Minga in Dunnville. For more information, feel free to reach us on Facebook or Instagram. Make sure to check out our online schedule to tune in to other events from November 7th to 28th, 2020.
Hi, Brad Smith here again for the River Arts Festival 2020. This time I'm going to read a short piece from my second release of the year, a book called Cactus Jack. The book is about a woman named Billy Masterson. She grew up on a small farm. Her father, Will Masterson, was a thoroughbred horse trainer and not a particularly good one. He only had 30 acres and a couple of brood mares, and he'd been broke basically his whole life. Billy and her father had been estranged for a number of years over a misunderstanding when their parents split up. Near the first of the book, Will Masterson passes away and Billy comes back for the funeral, intending just to stay for a day or two. She finds out, however, that she has inherited the farm, which is not a good thing because the farm has more debt than it's worth. So it's going to be a short scene that takes place right after the funeral. They go to the community center for a time of fellowship, as they say. And you're going to meet a woman named Marion Dunlop, who's Will Masterson's girlfriend, who Billy has never met. And also a guy named David Clay, who was her father's best friend. The basement of the community center was low-ceilinged and quite small, and the crowd there with the offer of free food and coffee was standing room only. Billy poured a cup for herself and stood off to the side near the exit door, which she planned to use as soon as was politely feasible. A few people came over to speak to her, mostly men and women of her father's vintage. They asked how she was, where she lived, what she was doing now. None of them seemed overly impressed with her position as waitress at Freddy's Fish Shack. She saw David mountain Clay when she arrived. He was hard to miss, standing near the dessert table talking to Marion, who seemed to know everybody in the place, including the church women in the kitchen who had provided the meal and were even now were making up more sandwiches and refreshing the coffee urns. Once the well-wishers had wandered off from Billy, Clay made his way over, the coffee cup in his huge hand looking like a child's plaything, something from the Betty Crocker kitchen set Billy had once owned. He extended his free hand. "And how are you, Mr. Clay?" Billy asked. "Finer than frog's hair," the lawyer said. "I didn't know if you'd remember me. You thought I might not remember the giant who sat at our kitchen table, drinking whiskey and playing cribbage with my father until all hours of the morning, the two of you pounding the table and cursing like sailors?" Clay smiled. 4 bits a game, those were important contests. His teeth had yellowed over the years, and his jowls hung like a bulldog's. In his heyday as a litigator, he had worn a fringed buckskin jacket to court and kept his hair quite long, well past his collar. The jacket was not in evidence today, but the hair was still shaggy, turned nearly snow white. He looked all right, though, Billy thought, like a lion that had managed to survive the vagaries and pitfalls of a cutthroat career and life in general, mostly intact. "How did you find my number?" she asked. "Your father had your number," Clay said, "along with his sisters and brothers. Your aunt couldn't make the trip from the West Coast, and I couldn't find your uncle. The number was no longer in service." "Well, that sounds like Uncle Randy," Billy said. "His whole life has been a bunch of numbers no longer in service." Clay drank off his coffee and looked for a place to set the cup. "And how was your life in Ohio?" "Peaches and cream," Billy said. "Did you ever marry?" Clay asked. He finally put the cup on a chair rail along the wall where it balanced precariously. "Not that I recall," Billy replied. "What about yourself?" "Still blissfully wedded to the former Florence Raymond Towns," Clay said. "God bless her." Billy had no idea if the lawyer was being sarcastic or not. She had never been able to tell, even as a little girl, when he would regale her with improbable stories of his ancestors, most of whom he claimed to have been bosom buddies with people like Daniel Boone, Andrew Jackson, and Abraham Lincoln himself. "Where is Mrs. Clay today?" Billy asked, looking around. "In Chicago with her sister," Clay replied. "Shopping and theater and all that. An annual pilgrimage." A woman came out of the kitchen just then to retrieve Clay's coffee cup from the chair rail, presumably before it fell. He watched her, smiling and ducking his head like an errant child. Will Masterson's close friend Marion was busy laying out more food across the room. Billy gestured toward her. "What's the story there?" she asked. Clay turned to look. "Oh, your father had his gallbladder removed, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Marion was the attending nurse at the time. They hit it off, you might say." "Well, isn't that romantic?" Billy said. "She's still a nurse?" "Retired now," Clay said. "She's quite active in the community and with the church." "Gosh, she and my father were soulmates," Billy said. "Sarcasm is a poorly constructed cloak," Clay said, turning back to her. "Oh, was I being sarcastic?" Billy asked. "You know it, and I know it," Clay told her. "So what are your plans now?" "Heading back home," Billy said. "Thinking I might sneak a couple of those brownies into my purse on the way out the door. Home being home, Billy said, where I live. I seem to remember you being a lot smarter than this, Mr. Clay." "And I remember your sass," the lawyer replied. "No, I thought maybe you were referring to the farm, which was your home for many years. I thought you might stick around a couple days." "I have no reason to stick around." "Well, you were wrong about that," Clay told her. "And why is that?" "Because there are matters that require settling," Clay said. He paused, enjoying the moment. "I seem to recall you being a lot smarter than this, Billy." She laughed. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? Apparently we don't have enough brains between us to light a match. We got to run for office." "I have been asked, believe me," Clay said. "I assume you wouldn't possess a house key to your father's place." "I don't remember there ever being one," Billy replied. "He never locked the place." "He did in recent years," Clay said. "The changing landscape of our world, Billy. People who do drugs tend to steal things to pay for those drugs. If they were to apply those efforts and that ingenuity to hard work, I dare say we would be living in Valhalla." "Valhalla," Billy said. "You haven't lost your flair for hyperbole, Mr. Clay. Didn't your great-great-grandfather once wrestle Davy Crockett?" "Did I say that?" Clay asked. "Well then, I suppose it must have happened." He dug into his pants pocket and produced a key. "For the house," he said. "You might as well stay there while you're here." Billy did not immediately reach for the key. "I'm not sure the old man would want me to." "Well, you're wrong about that too," Clay said. And that is Cactus Jack. Thanks for listening.